So Nancy Botox Pelosi and Chuck E. Cheese Schumer are putting pressure on the Trump administration to cut loose the Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, because when he was AG down in Miami, he brokered the sweetheart plea deal for Jeffrey Epstein. Hi, it's Pastor Marty from the Afternoon Drive, breaking in a new camera, so we'll see how this goes today. We all know that Jeffrey Epstein, one-time supposed financial whiz, who actually got a gig teaching college, despite the fact he doesn't have a college degree. He's a multi-billionaire, yet no one really seems to know how he made his money. Supposedly he was a hedge fund manager, but nobody really can explain where his money came from. I have some theories, and of course it's tied to pedophilia, the child sex rings. It was just a few days ago that Nancy Pelosi's daughter, when Epstein was re-indicted and then incarcerated, pending a hearing regarding what his release might be, could be, and bail, it was Nancy Pelosi's daughter who said, Washington better brace itself because there's going to be an awful lot of people we know that are going to be implicated. And she was referring to the Democratic side of the aisle. So what did Nancy Pelosi do? She immediately had to try to find the Trump connection. Now, of course, we know that Mr. Acosta, serving as Secretary of Labor under President Trump, did serve as the Attorney General. He was the face behind an incredibly lenient plea deal. This is a dirtbag, Mr. Epstein, who it is believed has had sexual relations with underage girls, you know, those early teens, 13, 14, 15, literally hundreds and hundreds of them. Had his own little private sex island. And when this first came out, it was brought out during the 2016 election cycle. Conservative media, alternative conservative media, was all over this. The mainstream lying legacy corporate corrupt media was not interested in it. Why? Because of the Bill Clinton connection to Mr. Epstein. The fact that over 24 times he flew on his jet. Claims now it was only 4 times, and he never actually went to the island or did anything with Epstein. Barely knew the guy. But he flew on his plane over 24 times. The same private jet that this guy took to his private island to engage in underage sexual escapades. Now, of course, the Clinton campaign wanted this to just go away. They didn't want any implication or any inference that Bill, not being able to behave himself, what was that going to look like for Hillary Rodham Clinton and her run to be the first female president? So this story just went away. In fact, it actually really started to go away during the 2008 election cycle when Hillary Clinton running against Barack Obama. And that was when Epstein was initially charged. It's when he got this unbelievable, basically a glorified house arrest that was unmonitored, despite the fact that he had engaged in hundreds of these escapades with underage girls. So there is definitely much more of a Clinton connection. Now, Mr. Acosta, Attorney General, didn't come up with this decision alone, as President Trump was correct in pointing out.
Well, I met Secretary Acosta this first time I know when I made the deal to bring him on into the administration. I can tell you that for 2.5 years he's been just an excellent Secretary of Labor. He's done a fantastic job. Now, part of it is Our economy is so good. Our unemployment numbers are at record lows. So many good things are happening. But the fact is, he's been a very good Secretary of Labor. What happened 12 or 15 years ago with respect to when he was a U.S. attorney, I think in Miami. Is it Miami?
Yes.
If you go back and look at everybody else's decisions, whether it's a U.S. attorney or an assistant U.S. attorney or a judge, you go back 12 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago and look at their past decisions, I would think you'd probably find that they would wish they maybe did it a different way. I do hear that there were a lot of people involved in that decision, not just him. I can only say this from what I know, and what I do know is that he's been a really great Secretary of Labor. The rest of it we'll have to look at. We'll have to look at it very carefully. But you're talking about a long time ago, and again, it was a decision made, I think, not by him, but by a lot of people. So we're going to look at it very carefully. We'll be looking at that very carefully.
And as far as President Trump's direct connection to Mr. Epstein, well, he addressed that as well.
Well, I knew him like everybody in Palm Beach knew him. I mean, people in Palm Beach knew him. He was a fixture in Palm Beach. I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan. I was not, a long time ago. I'd say maybe 15 years. I was not a fan of his. That I can tell you. I was not a fan of his. So I feel very badly, actually, for Secretary Acosta, because I've known him as being somebody that works so hard and has done such a good job. I feel very badly about that whole situation, but we're going to be looking at that and looking at it very closely.
But there's audio and video of Trump 20 years ago saying nice things about him.
Trump has said a lot of nice things about a lot of people that later he's had to regret. That said, just because you know of someone and you travel in some of those same circles a little bit because of business, because of social standing in the state of Florida, it doesn't make them best buds. Not to mention what's not being talked about and what the president could have said and didn't to defend himself. He threw Epstein physically out of Mar-a-Lago over 15 years ago when the director of the spa there came to Mr. Trump at the time and said, this man is acting very inappropriately with some of our younger female employees. Trump confronted him, kicked him out, banned him from the facility, never to be allowed back. President Trump is not lying when he says he's not a fan, and I'm sure Mr. Epstein is not a fan of Donald Trump. Bill Clinton, on the other hand, Mr., what is he, 75 years old and still goes to spring break, likes to party. We all know his proclivity for females. He partied with Mr. Epstein. And he's going to have a hard time denying it. That's why he released a statement. Notice he's not getting out in front of any cameras answering any direct questions. President Trump did. Why? Because he's not guilty. He's got nothing to hide from, and he's got nothing to be afraid of. Now, his Secretary of Labor, they are looking into it. They've been looking into him since January. And I'm sure behind closed doors that Trump is furious. Again, this is one of those guys that Trump didn't know him and didn't handpick him. This was another member of the deep state that was thrust upon Trump and in the beginning of his administration, thinking that the way he was going to get things done was to actually play nice with some of the political establishment that was there. We all know how that has worked for President Trump. It hasn't worked because these people, even if they've worked for him, they've been against him, they have leaked, they have lied, they have created nothing but chaos and turmoil. But the president and his direct effect with policy on the economy has the economy so rocking and rolling that obviously this guy, because cream rises to the top and, a rising tide lifts all ships, this guy looks like he's doing a great job as the Secretary of Labor because of what President Trump has done. And you can believe me when I say this, that he's got Giuliani and everybody else digging through this guy's dirt now. But again, Acosta did not make this decision alone. There was enormous political pressure and a lot of Democrats involved in this up to their eyeballs. Many of them, i.e. Bill Clinton and his inner circle, they partied with this guy. which means Bill, probably with underage girls. Mark it down. That doesn't mean Bill Clinton is going to be indicted, doesn't mean he's going to see the inside of a jail cell. No, Mr. Epstein is going to fall on the sword for everybody. But there is no real connection here to President Trump other than he hired a guy recommended to him by the GOP establishment who turns out to have made a wretched decision in letting Epstein off with basically a glorified hand slap. But again, the behind-the-scenes political pressure to do so, and who knows, maybe Mr. Acosta did a little partying with Epstein. How did this guy have and wield such powerful influence? I have addressed this before. Some of you feel that it's, here we go. Here's that conspiracy theory of, devil worship and molesting of children. It doesn't matter whether you believe that or not. I want to be emphatically clear about this. It doesn't matter whether you believe that or not, whether you accept that or not. You have to understand that the corruption in Washington is deeper than a political party or a political philosophy. It is a culture of power and control. It is one of the reasons that presidents like Trump, like Reagan, have been so hugely unpopular with establishment Washington. These are not guys who came up through the ranks. These are not guys who came through the usual skull and crossbones and occultic type hogwash. These were guys that captured the hearts of the American people and said, I can go to Washington and I can fix things. And they fixed things in spite of the opposition, even within their own party, not because of the help they get. But understand that establishment Washington, I'm not talking about just Democrats or Republicans. It's both sides who are part of that oligarch, that one world. They want power and control. And in the occultic framework, in that satanic ritualistic mindset, again, it doesn't matter whether you or I believe this or not. These people are committed to the idea that if they violate children, they glean power. They glean greater control. Again, it's so far out there that they count on the fact that it sounds so absurd and so off the wall and like something out of a really terrible horror movie that the average American listens to that for about 30 seconds and says, that's ridiculous. You're out of your mind. And that's the gain for them. That's the stronghold for them. It is the disbelief that protects them. And see, and Epstein engaged in this behavior for decades and did this with enough powerful people, he assumed he was protected forever. But just like Weinstein got exposed, now Epstein is exposed. And there are going to be some political heads in Washington that are going to roll. I can tell you this, it won't be President Trump. And even though I am sure that Bill Clinton and the Clintons themselves are in this up to their eyeballs, it won't be them either. This is a story to watch. But right now, Democrats like Nancy Pelosi and some of their willing cohorts in the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media, they're going to try to pin this one again or implicate Trump. But in the end, this doesn't hold water because the real tidal wave is coming that's going to sweep up a whole lot of Democrats that partied with this guy and a whole lot of establishment corrupt politicians. And by the way, think about this. If they engage in activity with underage girls because they believe in their deviant behavior, that gives them greater control and greater power. Do you really think that people that are willing to do that with that type of a belief system ever actually see the inside of a courtroom? Mr. Epstein could just end up disappearing one day. That's it for this rant. Haven't done one like this in a long time. Give it a thumbs up. Please post your comments. I want to know what you think about all of this. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel and smack the bell for my next rant.